Welcome to Talking New York Real Estate with Vince Rocco. Our show is all about the exciting world of real estate and in particular, how it relates to the luxury New York marketplace. But if you are not planning a real estate transaction in New York, we still have plenty of information you can use no matter where you are. Now, here's our show. Hello everyone, I'm Vince Rocco in New York, so let's get right to what everyone is talking about. Today on the show, the state of our industry is a wow. In a shifting real estate landscape where inventory lingers and deals don't move like they used to, the old school obsession with listings just doesn't cut it anymore is true. Client over listing isn't just a catchy phrase, it's a call to action. In this episode, we will unpack why today's most effective agents are shifting from a property-first mindset to a people-first approach. The modern agent isn't just a marketeer of homes, but a strategist, a therapist, and a trusted guide to the highs and lows of buying and selling journey. Because in today's market, listings just don't close deals, relationships do. Stick with us as we explore how putting the client at the center of everything isn't just good business, it's the only way forward. And on set with me today are Molly Townsend from Molly B, Townsend Coaching and Consulting, and Jared Antin from Brown Harris Stevens. Yes, I said Brown Harris Stevens. And they join me now to discuss. But first, let me welcome my listeners and my viewers from across the United States and all around the globe. This is Talking New York Real Estate. So let's go behind the headlines and get into real estate, the state of our industry.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back with Talking New York Real Estate. So before we get started here, I just wanted to make a comment. We have Jared Antin sitting here next to me. He's been here multiple times before. As one of my featured guests, favorite guests, etc. He now belongs to Brown Harris Stevens. He joined us last week as managing director, and I couldn't be any more pleased or happy because he's smart, he's articulate, he's a great person, and this company is going to be very grateful, if we aren't already, to have you on board. I also have Molly Townsend here, coach, counselor, consultant, in the real estate industry, has worked in this industry for many, many years. And we're going to talk today about client relationships, about how we need to be better at it versus being transactional, because all of this matters in the new changing world of the real estate industry here in New York as we are going through it. Jared, so let me start with you. Client over listing, it sounds simple, but it challenges decades and decades of our real estate culture here in New York. So what are the biggest mind shift changes that agents need to go through to kind of embrace, this philosophy and kind of get out of their normal way of doing business and understand better that relationships move the business even more so?
Certainly. And it's a pleasure being here and sitting in the seat again and being part of BHS. And I'm so happy to sit here with Molly as well, who truly is a magician. And Molly's a wonderful individual. So if you haven't spoken to her or gotten to know her, she's running an incredible coaching business that has done wonders for her clients. So definitely reach out. But I think it's important to really set the stage of what does it mean when we say agent or client focused or listing focused. So if you're listing focused, that means you're being basically reactive to what the client says. You speak to a new prospective buyer and they say, hey, I really want a 2-bedroom on the Upper East Side for $2 million. And then you scamper off, you go onto StreetEasy or whatever listing system you use and you plug it in and you find, 10, 15, 20 options and then you send them to the client and you're like, what do you think? And truthfully, you added negative value. Why? Because you did in an hour what the client could have done in 5 or 10 minutes on their own. So when you talk about being client-centric, that means before you ever get to what are they looking for, that's really actually the end of the road. You need to come alongside for that journey of self-discovery to figure out what do they actually want. So why did you reach out today? Why are you even thinking about purchasing or renting or selling, depending on what side of the trade they're on? Understanding what are those motivating factors? What may be changing in their life? What sort of needs or wants are coming up? What about the current setup is no longer feasible? And only when you understand that can you then position yourself not as a salesperson. That really undermines who we are. Position yourself as a true advisor to help them understand and go through that journey. And if you understand what are the requirements or what are the needs that are manifesting, then you can together co-opt and come up with, okay, well, these are this set of parameters price, location, size, amenities that'll meet those needs. And only when you come to that together do you have ownership in it as a collective group. You're solidifying your partnership, and then you can march together to go and figure out what options work.
Molly, I mean, what Jared just said is 100% correct. So you actually work with agents in a coaching and consulting basis. So when they come to you or you go to them and say, okay, it's time to make a change in the way you are doing business, what are their fears? I mean, do they understand the difference between relationship and transactional? And how do they adjust their time and their energy to making it work for them? Because it's a big change.
I would say that most have some self-awareness, right? So they know if they're a transactional broker or if they're a relationship-driven broker. So we're starting there. We're starting in agreement about what type of broker they are.
It's interesting that some people do recognize or admit that they're transactional.
Yes.
Because Vince Rocco, has a major problem with transactional people. Major in this business.
So I like to use, just to get pedantic for a minute, I like to use transactional versus property specific or listing.
Right.
Because you see it on the buy side as well.
Yeah.
It's a personality type that likes the game of it, likes to win, is competitive. I often joke, you see a lot of recovering addicts in the business who are incredibly successful, right? Because they've taken that singular focus to transactions. They're addicted to the deal, right? And in a market like we're in now, where I think if I'm an agent right now, I am focused on building my buyer pipeline almost exclusively. And if you're a transactional agent, that's not as easy to do, right? You don't have the patience for the relationship building and for that kind of, as you say, soft skills. So what I do is one simple thing from the get-go with those transactional brokers, which is I challenge them on, can you have a conversation with a potential client with no attachment to outcome? That one simple thing. Can you just let go of any attachment to outcome? You don't have to be the most personable. You don't have to have like the strongest EQ. You just have to manage to let that one thing go.
You know, it's interesting though, because, and I'm just, talking both sides of the deals, both sides of the story here. I've noticed throughout the years that I'm in this business, 23 years, there are a lot of agents that do not have personality. They just do not have personality. So I can understand why they want to stick to the transaction, whether it's a buy transaction or selling transaction. They don't have what it takes to be emotional, to be, relationship, forward. They just can't do it. It's like they're lacking social skill. Look, it's not just agents. It's a lot of people in our world out there. But if we're going to be doing this, I believe you got to have some kind of personality. Jared, what is the tangible ROI in prioritizing relationships over transaction, or is there? I mean, are you going to get more business? And I think this is where the agent in general is going to be thinking, I don't have the time for that. I've got to move to the next. I've got to do the next thing.
So I am a numbers guy, but I actually don't have a number for this.
You are a number guy.
So this is where I'm going to be very, feel oriented. I think the time is the metric in which you can really measure here, because so many times agents spend investing in clients that, to use my least favorite term, ghost them. And you don't actually understand why. And the reason why is you didn't actually do a good enough job to get to know the client initially to be able to align yourselves or earn their respect. And of course, it's human nature. It's a lot easier just to not respond to someone than to say, hey, I'm going in a different direction. Or Molly, I'm sure you know this better than most. You get agents that says, well, a client told me they wanted the Upper East Side, and all of a sudden I find out 6 months later they bought in Tribeca. Like, what the heck? And it's because, again, you're not understanding the real reasons or the motivations behind the client. So you're taking what they tell you at face value. And if you trust what the client says from the get-go, then you haven't hardened yourself as a broker in this, right? And that's not that we think our clients are lying to us. It's that we don't think the clients necessarily know how to express fully up front what they're looking for that'll solve their needs, because part of our job is to help them figure that out. So to answer your direct question from an ROI, this is about using your time more wisely. And for all of us, time is our most limiting resource. Yeah. So you can work with more clients with spending better time with those clients that actually want to work with you, or you can work more efficiently and have a higher ROI in your time by actually working with fewer people, but having a significantly higher close rate. So this allows you to invest in those that truly value and want to invest back in you.
We describe the modern agent, or we want to describe the modern agent as being a strategist, a therapist, a guide, and I say bartender, okay, because you got to talk to them about everything. How do these roles show up differently when you're working with a buyer versus a seller, or do they?
Well,
I mean, to be everything to a client.
If we want to get specific about what that's like right now, right? Because I think we're in an interesting market. It's midsummer. A lot of listings around the city are just sitting, right? And no amount of price dropping will help. We'll bring in the traffic. We'll do anything. It's like a tree falling in the woods, right?
Correct.
So.
And there are a lot of those.
And there are a lot of those. So. How do you manage that with a seller right now? Like that's, you could be the best at setting expectations from the get-go, and still week after week, I have a client who has a 1-bedroom in Sutton right now. Ooh, crickets. Yeah. I think he's shown it once in the last 90 days.
Tell me about it.
Okay. So he's having to manage that difficult conversation week after week after week. He's also expending a lot of his energy, emotional energy, thinking, am I ever going to sell this? What could I be doing differently? Every week we have a call and we talk about different outreach strategies, different marketing strategies. But at the end of the day, like there's only so much you can do. So what I'm trying to get him to do now is shift his focus to buyers, shift his focus and his emotional energy on people who are actually looking to transact.
And just to build on that, I mean, this is why it's really important to have that relationship over the transaction. So it's okay to be able to say to a seller or even, to a buyer based upon their circumstances that honestly, now's not the best time to buy or sell. And that's why, again, coming alongside the seller to truly understand what's their motivation, why now, right? Is there a real need? Is there a want? Because sometimes the price that it's going to take to clear the property is not going to be, good for them. And that's the salient point right now is in today's market, which, as I've repeatedly said and have coined, it's punishingly efficient. So what does that mean? That means that...
I love that expression.
Yeah.
It's great.
So for some properties, the fact is there may be no price that you can clear it at today. No price that would either be acceptable to the seller or arguably more important in some cases, acceptable to the board to not risk a board turndown. So for some properties that are either just not in demand, Sutton Place and Turtle Bay is one neighborhood that has been so overlooked by our market, has high maintenance in some cases, properties are 20, 30, 40 years old, estate condition. I spoke to one seller the other day that loves their carpet in the bedroom, and it could be really expensive carpet, but that's actually a negative right now on our valuation approach. So you have to truly come alongside that seller and say, look, there may not be an effective price to be able to clear that property today. And if you need the money, then hey, here's what we can do and here's a game plan, but this is what you're going to get. And as much as Molly may be a magician, no agent is truly a magician because this market is so liquid and buyers are so fearful of overpaying that, this market is liquid but transparent and you're only going to get, a fair shake for your property.
Many agents feel pressure from their brokerages, the firms they work for, or teams from team leaders, or even social media, to focus on quantity not relationships. More listings, more showings, more posts. Now, Jared, you just came from running a brokerage before you joined Brown Harris. How can agents push back on that volume-driven mentality and instead build a sustainable business, relationship-driven business? Because again, brokerages want deals, brokerages want, amount of deals. Social media, the pressure is, I just closed this, I just listed this, I just did whatever. How do you work with agents to get them to understand that, yeah, we want quantity, but we want better quality?
Yeah, so quantity in and of itself is not the issue. Quantity often leads to an issue because it is hard to preserve the quality when you're doing quantity. And I'm not talking about quality of deals. I'm talking about quality of service. So every human has, Molly can expand on this, has a certain capacity. And some, individuals have a significantly higher capacity than others, and that's okay. But that capacity is what you're going to be able to deliver in the sweet spot of service. And as a business owner, it's really hard to be able to figure out how not to tip those scales out of balance, because you naturally are going to want to be able to do more, make more, service more, but you have to be really conscious about how you can unintendedly, tip those scales out of balance where you're all of a sudden delivering poor quality. And, when you're building a business or building a team, you're going to naturally have to take a step back to take two forward. So the smart agents, and it's really, really hard to do this, will naturally add an additional layer, bring on another agent, bring on an admin, bring on a support. Again, this is straight out of Gary Keller, the millionaire real estate agent. And the reason he can give away all of his secrets is because knowing the secret is not the hard part. It's following it and basically ignoring your own human intuition. That's the hard part. So those agents that are able to scale up or level up before they need it are the ones that are going to avoid hitting that period where they're going to inadvertently deliver less than stellar quality, and that hurts their reputation. So again, agents should want to do more. Doing more helps build more relationships, but your North Star should always be making sure that every person you come across has an incredible relationship that wants to become a raving fan for you and refer you other business. If you're doing anything but that, you should take a step back and reevaluate your frame of business.
I think that I just want to answer this question as well, that the focus on transactional volume really comes from national brokerage culture, right? Because outside of New York City, you have to do volume to survive.
Yeah, make $500 a transaction.
Right. So,
the listing prices are much less.
I mean, the number one coaching company in the country is designed for transactional volume.
Yeah.
Right. It's not, we are in our little bubble in New York City because you can do one deal and make $200,000, right? So I think if we do feel that pressure on the brokerage side, it's just a cultural adaptation of what is going on the national level.
Yeah, I know so many brokers who work upstate New York or in any other state in our country, and they do many, 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 many transactions in a year to make $200,000 or $250,000 a year. And here you do one sale potentially, and you can do that or more.
But keep in mind, when you're in other markets as a listing agent, you can do 50 trades a year because you never have to show your listing.
Lockbox, key at door, which is another thing that makes me great. All right, we've got to take a break. Talking New York real estate. We'll be back right after these messages. We're just getting underway on a very busy Tuesday morning. Don't go anywhere.
The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So, Molly, let me ask you, for agents that build their career on being listing machines, now I've made my career saying I'm a listing agent, not a machine, but a listing agent. What is the risk of staying, stuck in that model today? We've talked about needing to branch out, maybe working with buyers, becoming much more relationship driven. But, those who stick to, the listing, you can still have relationships with your sellers. You can still have relationships with the buyers that come in to see that listing. But yet it still seems to be a problem. One listing after the next listing after the next listing seems to be what is driving these agents. How do we get them past that? You can still find listings, but you got to do it in a different way.
One of the things I ask agents during my discovery call when we're talking about their business and coaching is, what do you like about the business? On a day-to-day, what do you enjoy?
I would love to hear some of those answers. Love to hear those answers.
I want to hear what they dislike.
Well, that too.
And a lot of them really, so on the listing heavy side, a lot of them really enjoy showing property. You know, they have gotten into the habit of, oh, great, I just sell this one property, right? Everyone comes to me. And
well, that's new development sales. I did
exactly.
that for years.
Yeah,
right.
I did that as well. And how easy is this, right? They come to me, I sell the property. And then when I unpack that a little bit, and when I dig a little bit deeper, it's not the property. Nobody actually loves the property. And every goddamn bio in this city says that they love architecture and they love the property. That is not true.
It's so exhausting.
That is not true.
It's not true. I
agree.
agree.
They love the connection, right? They love...
I thought you were going to say commission check.
They love No, they actually like engaging with another human being. Yeah. So when I can point that out and slow down the listing machine, then it becomes a different conversation, right? Like, you actually, and I could say this to you, Vince, you actually enjoy this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You've said yourself you have been a listing machine in the past.
Listing agent. I don't know.
Listing agent.
For years, basically. I mean, I work with buyers, yes, of course. I prefer to work with buyers, but it's just, I've been connected to a couple of buildings that it's just one listing after the next, and it's been like that for years. Now, the reason I'm asking is because I don't want to turn that business away.
Of course not.
No one does. But at the end of the day, though, I think, and maybe it's my personality, I'm not quite sure, but I like to get to know people. I like to get to know who that seller is. I like to get them to feel comfortable with who I am. I mean, we were in the green room a little while ago, and I was getting a text from a buyer of mine that we closed, I think, 2 weeks ago, board approval, blah, blah. And they're in town this week. They're coming here from Chicago, and he wants to have lunch. Now, we met very briefly only about a month and a half ago. It was a referral, and we connected. His wife is lovely. We got along wonderfully. And, when tomorrow I'm going to have lunch with him, right? She's on a business trip. So it's like, these are the kinds of people I like to work with. I like to create that. Why? We'll talk about it later. Referrals.
Well,
right? It's all about referrals.
Absolutely. And Vince, I got to ask, what does real estate and football have in common?
Competition.
No, they're both contact sports.
Contact sport. And he knows I'm a football fan.
What a dad joke, Jared. OMG.
As he's training his youngsters to be competitive with the
exactly.
golf club or whatever else.
It's all about who you know.
It's adorable. Oh, my God. No, but seriously, when you form the relationship with a buyer, in this particular case, or a seller, you get to talk to them after the transaction. And this is the issue I have. I stated at the top of the show, I have issues with transactional agents because it seems like they just don't care. I want to be engaged with my people afterwards. I mean, I'm friends with people I sold 23 years ago. Okay, and one guy in particular, we've done 8 transactions over 23 years. That doesn't happen because, whatever. It happens because you stay engaged, they like you, you like them, you form a relationship, okay? And when they think real estate, they think about us. That's what it comes down to.
I do make room for the possibility, though, that like attracts like, right? So not everyone wants to have a long-standing relationship with their agent. Right? So
no, some people
they want to
don't.
get
correct.
They want a fierce negotiator. They want to get the best deal possible. They want to share as little personal information as they can. Right? The transactional attracts the transactional is my point. What is a challenge for those brokers, though, is getting the referrals because they don't have that natural, organic follow-up that the relationship-driven brokers do, right? So how can you put that in place? And that's where CRMs are really helpful, like having a system and a process so that
Oh
at
my
least
God, yes.
like you're wishing them a happy birthday and an anniversary and all that. Like,
and see, I love doing all of that. And I keep in front of my contact database at least once a week with a market report, something new, who's going to be a guest on my show. You know, they may be clients of mine, but that doesn't mean they're not listening or watching this real estate show. So you got to be in front of them about everything. Jared,
I'm actually going to ask Molly. I'm going to take us off script.
Go.
For a second. So, Molly, how do you size up an agent? If you're talking to a new agent that's, you know, a prospect to coach, how do you size up who they are? And then the second question is, how do you help them size up their clients? And sort of how do you solve that mismatch that may occur?
great question.
Good question, yeah.
I approach every canvas differently. So I used to have, and when I first started coaching, like a list of questions that I would ask. And now I just do it organically because I think that I find you get to a deeper place more naturally. But I ask them what they like, what they don't like. What they don't like is very telling. I ask them about price point, their relationship to money or limiting beliefs around money. That's a huge one. But you can pick up really quickly whether someone falls into the relationship-driven versus the transactional, right?
How often do you encounter that your assessment of them does not match their own assessment of themselves?
It's very rare.
Okay.
It's very
That's
rare.
encouraging.
Yeah. After that discovery call, I do an assessment and a strategic plan. And what I say about the assessment is this is meant to be a snapshot of who you are, where your business is right now, and so that we can be in agreement. Occasionally, I'll get a couple of things wrong, but for the most part, I get it right. And that's, everyone wants to be seen and heard at the end of the day. And that's essentially like my gift to the industry. As I was saying before we got on, I don't work with everyone. I don't want to work with everyone, but I love doing that assessment because I think it's a gift to say, like, here's a mirror. Yeah. Here's what I see. Here are all the gaps. Here are all the things that you're not doing. And creating more work for yourself and leaving money on the table.
Yeah. I teach real estate, as you all know, and I do the same thing in a very unofficial coaching capacity. A lot of the new students who are taking their license for the first time come into my continuing ed class in a break to ask me questions all the time because, they hear, whatever. And I sit them down and I coach them. And I one of the things I say to them all the time is, you must understand how this business works, and you will, over time, when you get out there and, feet on the street are going to get more experience. But you have to understand, and I tell them this without, them even having jobs yet, you must learn how to be relationship-driven. You must learn how to talk to people, be comfortable with people, express, what, they want you to do. You got to ask them what they want, listen, and they kind of sit there and they absorb it all and take note. And, I don't see them after the fact, so who knows if they're really paying attention. But Jared, let me ask you, you managed agents for a very long time. Were you able to see the difference between a transactional agent and a relationship agent? And if so, what did you do with that? Or did you try and convert the other into a relationship? And again, Molly mentioned it before, sometimes some of the biggest stars in our industry are anything but relationship-driven. Yes. They're transactional. Yeah. So, there's that fine line when you're running a company or running a firm or managing agents. What do I do here?
So the short answer is yes. There is a clear, stark difference. There are some people that can be a bit more of a chameleon. I don't believe that it's possible to change someone's innate self, right? No. Or at least not my ability to do so. Maybe someone like Molly. But I can teach someone anything about real estate, and I can adapt it to understand, who that person is as an individual. And I think if you're aware of who you are and how you show up and how you tick and the areas that you see success, I think that you can build the arena in which you do well in. Now, this takes a certain type of personality where you have to have self-awareness. And we all know that not everyone is coachable or self-aware, and there may be those that have a lot of blind spots. So if you see agents...
What about emotional intelligence and adaptability?
That's huge, right? So if you don't have good EQ, if you're not aware of your surroundings, if you're not sort of aware of where your shortcomings are, it's going to be very hard for you to succeed in this business because you're not willing to put in the work, or you're not even aware necessarily where the work needs to be put in, and you're going to constantly get faced with rejection. If you have some sense of self-awareness, it is easy for you to be able to either compliment yourself, counteract the weaknesses, or you're able to know the type of clients that you attract. And some of the easy ways that people have, complimented them is by finding a partner. And where I worked previously, there was a team that worked together for a period of time that I said was the total best example of yin and yang. They were great friends, arguably best friends, and they were polar opposite individuals who perfectly complement each other. That's where teams work really, really well, because that's where 1 + 1 equaled like 12. And it was phenomenal for them. In other situations, teams can't always work well because you almost have too much of the same, together. So self-awareness, high EQ, the ability to adapt, and more importantly, the ability then to portray or present yourself externally to, as what we talked about before, attract the type of people that you want to work with is so important.
What do you feel about that?
I was just thinking about how if relationship skills or EQ is a spectrum, that you do risk, and I have one client in particular I'm thinking about who just cares way too much. He feels all the feels. And where it shows up for him as an obstacle is he makes assumptions about his relationships. Oh, they don't want to hear from me. Oh, I can't call them at noon because that's their lunch hour. And, he has longstanding friendships. He has a huge amount of raving fans, but he's so sensitive to the relationship and their needs that he won't ask for business. And he hesitates unless he has to call them or has a real reason. He won't call them to check in. And it is the number one obstacle for his business right now.
He gets in his own way. Yeah.
Maybe he needs to change his career, right? Maybe.
He's successful. I mean, he's been doing this for 15, 16 years. He is...
Again, I think it's that lack of social skill and emotional, whatever, that keeps him or anybody like that back from actually engaging, with people in what I call the proper way. Let's talk a little bit about social media, because I think we're all, sometimes way too focused on social media. It's either helpful or hurtful. In real estate, it's almost like every time I, sign on and look at one of my news feeds, another agent is tapping themselves on the shoulder. Just close this, just close that, just close this. It's like, all right already. Does that help you build relationships, or does that just show people out there, I can get it done, call me?
Well,
and not that there's a problem with that, but how do you, flush that out?
There's one variable that's most important that determines the answer to someone's success in social media: their audience. Very simply, if their audience is made up of individuals that don't have the means to buy the type of product they're selling, it's useless. If the audience is made up of other agents in our industry, then it's an ego play. If their audience is made up of individuals that look and feel like the type of clientele that they want to attract, then it could be a really important tool.
How do people keep engaging in social media day after day after day? There's a way to do it, there's a way not to do it, right? So how do you do it, but do it successfully, meaning that someone's going to look at it and say, okay, maybe he's for me, she's for me, maybe when I have a real estate need coming up, I'm going to call that person. How do you do this?
My social media, I'll speak about mine personally. I hired a woman who does my marketing to manage my social. It checks a box. It feeds the algorithm. It helps me stay top of mind, and that's about it. And it was hard for me to get to that place where I just let that go. You know, when I was obsessing over the content and insecure about using this image of me. And my marketing person, who has great expertise in social media, she was like, Molly, we're just feeding the algorithm. We're just feeding the algorithm. So there is something to be said for that volume. That's now the way that Meta has built the platform.
And just to build on that for 1 second, then I'm going to pass it back to you. You know, in the last couple of weeks, ChatGPT and the other AI chatbots are now pulling from Meta and things like that. So your Facebook, your Instagram, your different posts and content are now feeding those chatbots. And what's important is the chatbots have now revolutionized the way that people are searching. Google is arguably losing its luster. When someone's searching, hey, what's the best real estate agent for me? You know, you're not searching in Google and getting, you know, the Real Deal's, you know, annual rankings. What you're getting is a personalized result. I'm looking for the best agent to help me buy a 2-bedroom, $2 million condo in the East Village, right? And you're going to get a personalized result. So this has now just totally changed the game of who you are putting social media out for and for what purpose. Again, this gives you the way, even if you don't necessarily have the audience today in your social, to be able to put out content that will attract that. And I've already heard agents who may not be household names, you know, already getting clients off of, you know, a ChatGPT recommendation.
I hear that every day now. It just, the first time I heard it, I was like, what? And then, it's now quite common. What I was going to say is successful social media to me, and this comes from a client of mine who does a fair amount of business from social leads, is it's about engagement. So he's not like me, just feeding the algorithm. I feed the algorithm and then I don't really engage. He's not only liking, he's commenting, he's connecting with new people. Like he's playing the game fully. Most people don't play the game fully. And it's amazing to watch because he really does have tremendous ROI.
I've been saying that forever, and when I teach my social media class in real estate school, it's all about engagement. It's all about, you know, there's this weird thing out there with social media where people don't want to publicly like something or comment on something. I don't understand that. I never will. But when you do that and people see that you're engaging, it sets a whole different tone, and it's a necessity. I think there are ways to use social media for our business, for building relationships, and there are ways not to. Any tips that you can say, Jared, that agents should kind of look into when they're engaging or trying to engage their audience on social, regardless of what the platform?
So I don't know that there's one right way, or there are certainly some wrong ways to do it, but there's multiple different right ways based upon the person's, you know, personality. Some people lean more towards just pure entertainment. Some people lean more towards infotainment, you know, type of piece. Me personally, again, being the numbers nerd, I like to lean more towards that infotainment, or maybe more info-less-tainment. I don't really know. But to me, about being able to present a balance between what's some value-add content, you know, what's giving you some exposure to some eye candy in the form of, you know, really attractive views or properties or things like that. But again, I agree with Molly and Vince. It's about staying top of mind, you know, being someone that is personable. You know, I mix my Instagram with a bit of, you know, personal and the family life too, to humanize me or to balance me. And I've noticed even on LinkedIn to drip some sort of family content or my son kicking my butt on the golf course, like that stuff actually performs really, really well because people really want to see that. So I think that's the important, is being true to yourself, and it's not an ego play at all.
No, it shouldn't be. All right, we've got to take a break. We're coming right back with Molly and Jared. Don't go anywhere. Talking New York Real Estate is coming back.
This podcast is supported by the More Network, powered by Brown Harris Stevens. Real estate touches every aspect of our lives, from design and architecture to investing and the economy. Now there's a way to get all your real estate information in one place. The More Network. With more than 20 podcast and webcast series, the Mastery of Real Estate Network is powered by Brown Harris Stevens, one of the country's most distinguished brokerages. Discover advice from notable entrepreneurs, compelling topics, and access to top global real estate experts. Subscribe to their YouTube and Apple podcast channels by visiting getmorenetwork.com.
Okay, we are back. So, Jared, on the consumer side, how can buyers and sellers spot the difference between a property-focused agent and one that is truly client-centric? Because I do believe that buyers can feel that or see that, and sellers can also.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm a buyer and my agent starts off the conversation by tell me what you're looking for, you know they're not on the right side of the curve. You know, if the agent starts, hey Vince, so great to meet you. What prompted you to reach out, or what's getting you thinking about buying today? That's the way that would tell me that, wow, they're actually off this on the right foot. Now the problem is the consumers are not necessarily predisposed to even react naturally or successfully to that first question, because again, agents are so clients are predisposed to the fact that, my agent is just gonna, I'm a number to them, churn and burn me, like, tell me what you want, let me get you in and get you out. So this is where it's like the clients sometimes don't even know how to react. And usually they'll go through it and the agent will be able to comfort them through this, and they'll react in a positive way, and it'll be so refreshing. And they're like, I don't know how I can ever talk to another agent again. And, truthfully, and I've said this to some different extent over the last, almost year since the buyer-broker agreements have come out, but using these agreements as an agent from the place of confidence and structure is so important, because that actually helps you facilitate that conversation with the buyer to reframe it right then and there. Because this is who I am, this is what I'm gonna do, this is how we work together, this is what it costs. And through that, it goes through the self-discovery process of like, okay, what are you looking for? And then how do we go at it together? So agents are either operating out of a fear or a lack of confidence, but agents can't be fearful and they need to have confidence. And if they present something that is different, then they actually are setting themselves apart and setting themselves apart for the better. And I've spoken to a ton of agents when it comes to, these agreements, and it's not about the agreement, but the agreement is a perfect example or a panacea, so to speak, of like what it is. And if they can use it for the greater good and they can use it to distinguish themselves, it sets them up to have a much better opening conversation with the client and step through that door.
Molly, looking ahead, so when you're coaching agents, today, our markets have been so uneven. They're up, they're down, they're not flexible. Sometimes they are flexible, and we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. How does a client-centric agent do in any market? Because we can thrive or we can fall down, but there are agents who can succeed in either type of market, and there are some that just cannot. So when you're coaching agents, do you talk about that kind of stuff? Do you make them understand that it's you that's going to drive your business versus the market driving your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we've been through some really interesting extreme markets over the last
very much so
5 to 7 years. So if you're still market dependent now in 2025, then likely your business is not going to do well and survive.
Correct.
Right? One of my clients texted me last night. He did an off-market deal in a building in the village, the West Village, and they got a great price. And he then was in conversation with the woman who lived directly below this unit. She heard the price. Oh my God, maybe I should sell. Maybe I should get out of New York before it goes to pot.
Here we go.
So he did what any good agent would do, followed up with her, sort of slowly walked her through, this would be the process. I can shop it off market for a while. Maybe I'll come in and take photographs, right? Baby steps.
Yeah.
But he is aware that if he pushes her too far, it will totally backfire. So she says, you can shop it off market. Maybe I'll make a decision after Labor Day. And he had written her a text. This is last night. He was about to push her a little too far. And he said, what do I do? And I said, I'll tell you the advice that I give almost every day, which is trust your instinct and play the long game.
Right.
And I think that's what, if I give blanket advice.
That is so perfect.
Play the long game.
Yeah, that is so perfect.
Play the long game.
But how did that settle in your client? Play the long game.
Well, he's very coachable, so he does what I say.
That works. No, because I agree. That's the right advice.
So now they're talking about listing in the spring.
Nice.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little off topic here about all this off-market stuff, because there seems to be so much more of it this year than ever before. Why?
Well,
where's the benefit?
It depends on who you ask and what side of the coin you're on. So I'll answer this through a couple ways. So off-market has been a thing for a long time.
Yeah.
But its meaning has changed and evolved, right? A traditional off-market should mean, according to my strict definition, a seller that has an arrangement with an agent to represent their home, and for whatever reason, they are private, they don't want photos of the home, so they don't want it publicly marketed, right? So this is something that we have assigned exclusive with the owner's instructions that please keep it off, any public-facing websites. And for some owners, there's reason here. If you have a prominence or a prominent property, there may be a good reason. Off market, from a buyer perspective, generally people think they're going to get a better deal, less competition. So sometimes there's some ego, pride, success, oh, I got an off market deal, right? For some sellers, they think that it'll be less inconvenient to their life, fewer people through. So there's all different reasons why some people would want to do it off market. The reality is, again, we need eyeballs on properties. The more people that see it, the more likely that someone is going to go and, actually purchase the property or it's going to get sold. So more eyeballs equals better results, quicker time, right? That's my general bias. Unfortunately, some companies in our industry have sort of used this off market as a way to try to increase their control, shift things. To be frank, a key reason that I'm sitting, at this company today is because I agree with the company's stance on, clear cooperation, the non-overuse or of off markets or private exclusives. I believe that what's good for the consumer is far and wide, share of information, and the fact that we should be able to go to one portal or one place. Again, you don't have to go to a specific portal. You can pick your portal of choice or website of choice, but having a centralization of all the information is really, really important, right? And people search for real estate relatively infrequently out of need. People search for real estate a lot more for sport. But the best example that I would give anyone is, how would you like to search for airfare, which people buy many, many, many times a year, if you couldn't go to Google Flights, Skyscanner, Expedia, pick your favorite site, and you had to go to every single airline's website and compare? You wouldn't really like it. So
that's the olden days, Jared.
That's the olden days. But so real estate is trying to, by those that are proponents of, these private exclusives, are trying to bring this back to where you would walk from real estate to real estate office to look at their, little black books and, scroll through the listings or go site to site. So again, that's the best way that I can sort of explain it. So to me, again, I understand that in certain situations with certain properties and certain clients, privacy is key, and that's great, and there should be a way to be able to respect that. But that shouldn't be a primary source of doing business or a way that you're trying to be able to move forward.
I have something to add there, which is that I think the proliferation of off markets has a lot to do with the fact that it's just sexy.
Yeah.
It's secretive. It has a mystique. And that's really born out of celebrity culture in the Los Angeles housing market.
Absolutely.
Which it actually is a necessity out there.
Absolutely.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So we are trying to latch on to that sense of sexiness and mystique.
Can we do that here?
No.
Well, we can do it differently.
It's not part of our culture.
It's
The
not part of
celebrity
our
walks
culture.
down the street, we look at them, we're like,
Exactly.
no big deal.
Exactly.
But here's a really important piece. So if you have a 20,000 square foot house, right, it's going to be impossible to photograph it all. It's going to be impossible to video, right? So if you have a 20,000 square foot house, it'll take a couple hundred photos. No one is going to scroll through a couple hundred photos.
No.
So what are they doing? They're taking 5, 10, 15 of the best shots. They're putting a minute sizzle reel, right? And it's giving you a snapshot. The problem is our properties here are small. You can capture everything on the property in 8 to 10 photos or a 30-second video. And the issue is we're actually not leaving anything to the imagination. So again, I like giving my analogies. So on a dating website, I haven't been on them, been with my wife for a long time, but if you were on one, would you bear it all and show all the photos of your assets,
No.
In that photo? No. So if you're marketing
I could
property,
be guilty of being no, I would not.
so if you're marketing a property, less is actually more. Just give enough to get the buyer to want to come in and see the property. Show 2 photos, show 3 photos.
Tease.
Don't give videos, just tease. And that's part of the issue is if you give it all away, then you're actually not going to leave anything for the buyer to come and see, and they would have already written it off. And it is impossible to get a buyer to buy the property if they wrote it off. It is possible to get them to buy when they come in. And we saw this during COVID, right?
Yeah.
You could still list properties, but how many contracts are signed when you couldn't show? Virtually none. So a showing is necessary. So the one tip that I give to agents all the time is do not overmarket that property. And what I mean by that very simply is fewer photos, no video, better.
So well said. All right, in this last block, I wanted to get to these last 5 points I have as to why I believe agents are not successful. Lack of consistent prospecting, fear of rejection or imposter syndrome, no clear system or process, okay? Poor personal branding, I'm a big branding person, okay? And 5, not investing enough in yourself. What says you?
Oh my God, I couldn't agree more. That's the best list.
What do we do to fix this? I mean, we talked about a lot of it, this morning, but lack of consistent prospecting, fear of rejection. Let's take that one.
Fear of rejection. Okay, so I'll walk you through how I'm working with my client who's afraid to pick up the phone.
There we go.
Okay. It's baby steps. It's a practice. It's getting him to even pick up the phone and call the low-hanging fruit. The people who he's not afraid to call.
Yep.
Just to develop the habit and the muscle.
Right.
That seems to be working for him. Imposter syndrome is a huge one that comes up almost in every discovery call that I have.
Just explain that to the audience.
And this came up in the panel last week too. So we had 3 of the top agents in the city, Lisa Littman, Tyler Whitman, and Kirsten Jordan. And they all said at different points in the panel that they have imposter syndrome, which is really remarkable, right? So it's not something that ever really goes away. It's something that you learn to manage. And I think if you have the right tools, you can manage it. But do you have imposter syndrome, Vince?
I don't think so.
You might be the exception.
I don't know. Maybe I do. I mean, I really haven't thought about it much. And I thought when I read this, okay, so do I? I don't know.
Well, it's funny. I think, it's all about having the right context, right? It's very hard for people to see themselves in the way that they're actually perceived.
Well, that's
it's funny. I remember after one of the shows I was on with you, Vince, with Nikki Field, and this is going back maybe a year and a half ago.
Last year, yeah.
I actually called you, Vince, afterwards, and I was like, thank you. And you're like, for what? I'm like, well, I think you just cured my imposter syndrome because I was able to sit at that table and Nikki and I had such an incredible dialogue. I'm like, holy crap. If Nikki liked what I had to say, I must be doing okay. So.
Oh, that's great.
She did. Oh, she did.
And Nikki and I still stay in touch. So, yeah.
She's lovely. One of my favorite people in this business. Branding. Poor personal branding. I mean, if you're social media centric, which a lot of us are, or if you have a brand, Talking New York Real Estate or whatever, why is branding so important? And how does that set you aside from the next agent out there?
I always say that the greatest gift that Compass has given to the industry
competition
is literally proving relatively overnight that brokerage brand matters less than agent brand.
Correct.
And you ask
Absolutely.
and I think it's actually a healthy thing to talk about and to acknowledge your clients hire you, Vince. They probably could care less where you hang your hat.
That's very true.
So knowing that, accepting that truth, why wouldn't you invest time into building and messaging and reaffirming who the Vince Rocco brand is?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Yes.
I'm going to anyway.
Yes.
Because I do this on my social media class when I'm teaching in real estate school. In order for you to brand properly, in order for you to brand yourself at all, because I so agree with you, our brand is so much more important than our firm's brand, okay? Not to diminish our firms because I work here because I happen to love my firm's brand. But in order for you to brand properly or correctly, you have to first ask yourself the question, who am I? And the second question is, what is my why? That's it. When you can answer those two questions, then you can start formulating what your brand needs to be. Because we all have a brand, or we can have a brand, but if you don't even know who you are or how you place in this business,
Right.
what are you branding? And that's why I can pick it out like it's nothing. When I'm looking at social media and I'm scrolling through my feed, I'm like, oh, whatever, or these one-offs, or I call them one-hit wonders that, left us in the 60s and 70s with music, right? One-hit wonders aren't going to do anything. Consistency.
There's also two sides of the coin. So I wholeheartedly agree that, clients are hiring the agent and the brand, and they need to like them because the client is only interacting with the agent. They're not directly interacting with the firm.
Correct.
Unless there's an issue.
Correct.
So for anyone that is coming out of your network, your spheres of influence, your raving fans, it's 100% you, and they can care less where you work. If you're prospecting, though, and you're going out into the market with people you don't necessarily know today, the firm can have a certain predisposition for how they're going to receive or perceive you. And that's where, some of this comes into play around the firm's brand. And that's also understanding the importance of where is the client deriving their business from.
And all of this, I, say, is investing in yourself, okay? And when agents don't invest in themselves, it's a problem. You have to be a brand. I talk about it all the time when I'm teaching. You go to the grocery store, you buy the same milk, you buy the same bread, you buy the same eggs for years and years and years. Why? Because your mother did or your dad did, and you're comfortable with it. And that's all I know. I go to the store, I pick the same milk, and I'm like, I go home and I laugh because now I teach it so much. I go home, I look at the milk, I'm like, of course you bought that milk. Because it's a solid brand that makes sense and you're comfortable with. And so people will relate to you in social media, on social media, or in life, buyers and sellers, because you are a brand. Think Vince.
Yeah.
Right?
I think, though, in a crowded marketplace, and I'll use a specific example from a new client. So I'm newly working with a team. They have had the same production for the last 4 or 5 years. They can't seem to break through.
Correct.
They've done all the right things. They have the luxury presence sites. They are active on social. They have a nice logo and color scheme.
Break that glass ceiling.
And it's my reaction to them is it's like, just looks like everybody else's content.
Commoditized. There you go.
It's just, you have to, I'm not saying that you have to be extreme and stand out wearing a pirate's costume, but you have to make your content reflective of who you are.
And find your niche.
100%.
And find your niche.
Yeah. Find your niche. Okay, with that, we're coming right back with my final thoughts. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back with my final thoughts. So, the takeaway here is clear. Real estate has evolved beyond just listings, showings, and contracts. In a slower, more fragmented market, client overlisting is more than a catchy phrase. It's a necessity, a necessary strategic shift. The agents who will survive and succeed in the next chapter of this industry are the ones who see that their role as far more comprehensive, not just salespeople, but long-term advisors, problem solvers, and advocates for their clients' best interest. That means moving past transactional thinking and developing deeper emotional intelligence, patience, and resilience. It means understanding that every client has unique motivations, fears, and life changes driving their decisions, and that guiding them through those complexities is where the real value lies. Agents must create experiences where clients feel seen, heard, and generally cared for, because that trust doesn't just close one deal, it opens the door to referrals, repeat business, and lifelong connections. In the end, listings may get the attention, but relationships are what close deals and, more importantly, what will sustain careers. And as I always say, just be memorable and everything will work out. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Substack, or TikTok at Vince Rocco. And Confucius says, choose a job you like and you will never have to work a day in your life. And the only person you should try to be better than is the person you were yesterday. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network to all of you all around the world, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. Keep thinking the good thoughts, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.